I will wait.
Is she hot?
I will wait.
Because if she is, that's a bad idea.
All right, welcome to the Hammer Factor. This is episode 25.
I'm done, by the way. I've gone through all my material already.
The day run
seriously.
edition.
You guys want to talk about the party rap some more?
Yeah, that's all I have left.
We got a great show lined up for you. On the horn, we have Policy Director for the Outdoor Alliance, North Fork Champion, and Poker Maverick. Welcome back to the show, Lewis Geltman.
Hi, Johns.
Also on the horn, sitting in a recliner, a leather, like a smoke chair or something.
That's right.
I was
Smoking
thinking
jacket.
more like psychiatrist's couch. We were going to get the inner monologue of John Weld today.
Co-owner of Immersion Research, Whitewater legend, John Weld. Welcome to the show, John.
Hello.
We got a good show lined up, I think, if we can keep it together. Lewis, you want to start us off?
Sure, man. I am
How big was
working
your
on this,
raise?
what's that?
Like, how big was your raise when you got a raise? Like 20%? 30%? What's a director get
Double
paid?
digits. Single digits or double digit raise?
Still in the works. We should, I'll be sure to share this comment with Kramer.
You want me to get involved?
I went paddling with a lawyer this
Maybe
weekend.
once IR starts writing the big supporter checks, we'll be there.
Sure.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry. Anyway, on to Outdoor Alliance.
Yeah, man. So I'm writing this white paper right now. I thought I'd spin out my theory for you guys and see what you think.
This sounds vaguely racist.
It's only because you're existing in that West Virginia milieu that strikes you that way.
I don't know. It just a little alarm went off when you said that. But go ahead. I'll entertain this for a little bit at least.
So you know how we've been working for a long time now about this kind of fighting this state takeover idea. This idea of turning over the public lands to the states. It's still a big threat, but I think that we've stopped a lot of things over the last couple of years, and I think that there's kind of this sense in the broader community that in a lot of ways this maybe this isn't real, or maybe we've beat this thing back and we can kind of let our guard down a little bit. And it's not really accurate. I mean, I think that we've had some good wins, but I guess the way I'm kind of spinning this thing out is, thinking about what public lands are, like what makes public lands public lands. The first thing is that they're publicly owned, and there's this public right of access that exists on national forests and BLM lands and places like that. But, when we think about what are public lands, just sort of in the common phrasing, it's like it's not necessarily just federal lands. It's like you think about, it's like the places that you're free to go, basically, right? And so it's sort of like this public ownership, but it's also, public process to protect those places. Things like NEPA, which is the law that requires an environmental impact statement for big federal actions. Things like, forest planning. And then, tools like the Wilderness Act and the Antiquities Act to protect kind of the most important places and, management based on science. And then it's also proper funding for the land management agencies. So, these agencies that we've charged with stewarding public lands have the resources they need to do a good job. And so, for the last however many years, there's been this big concerted attack on sort of the first attribute, right? This, the idea of public ownership, and they want to kind of take that away as a means of, ratcheting up resource extraction, kind of development activities. And, we've had this kind of good run of wins, fighting back some of the worst state bills. Jason Chaffetz had that big sell-off bill that he had introduced this Congress that everybody got up at arms about and he pulled back on. Mark Amadei, who's a congressman from Nevada, had a bill in the last Congress to force the sell-off of a bunch of public land in Nevada, and he said that he wasn't going to reintroduce it because he recognized that it's really unpopular. But these same people who are really just trying to find ways to sort of circumvent environmental protections, the laws that kind of ensure protection for recreation access, they've kind of moved on to attacking sort of these other attributes of public land. So maybe we'll keep it in public ownership, but we'll move on to, attacking NEPA, attacking funding for the land management agencies, which is in a lot of ways the quickest way to, diminish people's enthusiasm for public lands is by making sure that the agencies that protect those places don't have the resources to do a good job, right? So, we're seeing this threat just sort of evolve, I think, from this like really overt, we're just going to take away the public lands kind of deal to sort of these more oblique attacks on kind of other attributes of public lands.
Well, sure. It's like abortion. If you can't fight abortion, well, let's go ahead and let's make it so doctors, have ridiculous requirements in order to offer these things,
Yeah, I think it's
just fight every peripheral aspect to the issue at hand.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable analogy. But I think, in a way, this whole state takeover thing has been sort of a blessing because it just makes the issue so easy to understand, right? It's like if they'd come out of the gates talking about, we're going to just hand over some, control over the national forest to local county commissions or to the states, like people would just sort of maybe shrug their shoulders and say, oh, that kind of makes sense, having the people who live there manage the public lands. But these guys have already like tipped their hand, right, by asking for the whole thing right out of the bat, right out of the gate. It's like they've showed what their agenda is, which is really, tipping the scales towards extractive industry, towards development, towards privatization. And so it's sort of like we know what we're up against now. And I think we're just thinking a lot about how to, kind of continue framing this issue in a way that is, very understandable for people. So I don't know. It's just kind of what I'm working on right now.
On this white paper, I don't know, I always think of white papers as like a thought leadership paper or whatever. Is this directed at the normal citizen? Is this like at outdoor advocacy groups? Who's intended to learn something from this paper?
We'll see. I think we're going to write it sort of like internally, and it's going to would form the basis for a lot of our communication stuff and just sort of thinking about how we're going to frame issues. But, I think it'll probably be public somewhere at some point, or at least I'll write something more accessible based on it.
God, Lewis, you do such more important stuff than I do on a daily basis.
Yeah, that can't possibly be true, man. Anyway, that's what I'm up to.
Yeah, dude, good on you. That sounds.
You buying it?
I am buying it, and I think it's like something that needs to be talked about.
People at the land management agencies, like they're reasonable people. Like they want to do a good job. They want to kind of balance these competing interests. It's a hard job, to keep all these different kind of constituencies happy with public land management. And I think the agencies do a good job of it for the most part. We certainly have plenty of things to argue with them about, but I don't ever feel like they're, acting in bad faith or anything like that. It's a hard job.
Outdoor.
So I gave $50 to Outdoor Alliance this week, right? And to be honest, I probably never would have thought about it until now, and I feel like things are in jeopardy. And so I feel that way about a lot of things right now. And so I know I can give money because I know ultimately money talks. You know what I mean?
Thanks, John.
And so so the question is like, I know there's a bunch of people out there, but I think we all feel sort of inundated by, there's 1,000 things we need to support. Like, how does Outdoor Alliance rise to the top of that, or the top 5?
Good question.
Yeah, I think that's a question that everybody has to answer for themselves, but I think that we are sort of the preeminent organization in terms of representing human-powered outdoor recreation on public lands. So, if you don't want to give money to Outdoor Alliance, I think, giving money still to, American Whitewater, or, IMBA if you're a mountain biker, or Access Fund if you're a climber, American Alpine Club, just supporting the organizations kind of in our constellation that are, working on public lands with our perspective in mind. I think it's worthwhile. I feel,
so basically,
I'm proud of the work we do. I think we do a good job.
If you're listening to this podcast, basically you should move one of those things up to your top of your list right now, because we're assuming you spend hours a week, every week of your life,
Yes.
involved with something in the outdoors.
Yes, I agree with that.
All right. Okay.
OutdoorAlliance.org. Sign up for the newsletter. And thanks again, Lewis.
Thank you.
All right. It wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be, I have to admit.
Me neither. I said, what am I going to talk about? It's Monday morning.
I heard white paper, and I was going off in a different direction, I guess. But okay, it was good.
Should we move to our celebrity guest, or should we touch? You want to touch on this Alex Aniol thing again that I was bringing up earlier? While I see. So
you have a half-baked theory that you're discussing before the show started, and let's get it out.
We're expecting your white paper also.
It is.
Right. The Jews are very crafty.
So
Bill Maher over here.
So I've been, the mountaineering world has always, not just kayaking, but everything mountaineering, kind of mountain sports, has always sort of intrigued me. And some of the things that inspired a long time ago for us to talk about a speed run on the Stickeen or this and that were other adventures and things that were happening in the climbing world. And so Alex, laces up his shoes, climbs El Cap, no ropes, no nothing, just climbs on up there. And I'm thinking, all right, well, what in kayaking is going to be analogous to this? So what is the level that puts on? I was like, well, I guess we got to start ditching our life jackets. So I kind of threw that out there, and you guys were like, no, that's dumb, whatever. But
we poo-pooed it.
You poo-pooed it right away. So,
Lewis, do you want to start, or should I start?
I just feel like in a lot of ways running really hard class 5, like you're already there, I mean, that was always kind of the feeling I had during high water little white runs, is like I was like, this is what it feels like to climb without a rope, because like you're in it and there's no stopping. And if you fuck it up, you're going to die. And like, I don't know. I guess I just don't feel the need to, I also feel like wearing a life jacket doesn't sort of interfere with your aesthetic experience in the same way that, wrangling ropes does when you're climbing. I don't know.
I mean, I think what Alex is doing is an extension, like a very, far out extension, but an extension of the Alpine style. The idea of going from Hillary, who had, Sherpas and cases of champagne and, 1,000 people climbing a mountain, to Shipton Tillman, Eric Shipton and Bill Tillman, who developed this idea of climbing a mountain with just a couple people and a minimal amount of equipment. You can do the same thing at a quarter of the, a 50th of the budget with, 2 people and a minimal amount of gear and go super light. I think Alex is expanding on that. So I think what Lewis is saying is true. And I think if you're doing Middle Kings in a day, you're there. That's it. It's a long trip that normally takes people 5 days. You're doing it in a day, just like, Aniol was doing this thing that normally takes people, 2-3 days to do. He's doing it in 3 hours, right? And you're hanging out there. You know what I mean? If something goes really wrong on a Middle Kings trip, you could easily die,
Oh, yeah.
No?
I don't know. I mean, to me, it's
how about
more
the Stickeen? How about a day run on the Stickeen?
I mean, I think it's like, or more like, like high water North Fork or something like that, where it's just so continuous and so big that if you come out of your boat, you're going to die. It's like that. And it's just having the sort of like presence of mind to operate in that environment where the moves that you're making might be within your comfort zone, but that it's just so stacked up that, if you make a mistake, it's over. Like, I think
that's the weird thing about kayaking. You go skiing, like, you go even like really tough, out of bounds resort type ski, from a resort type skiing is could be scary and difficult. It's never quite like kayaking, where when you peel out at the top of a class 5, you really don't have any recourse but to finish what you started. There's no stopping and sitting down. You know what I mean? You're going.
I mean, I think the guys who are really at the top of the sport, that's the case. People who are
but
really
you hit that point in kayak, but you hit that point in kayaking a lot sooner in the chain. You know what I mean? Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, it seems like the top 25% of the sport of kayaking it encounters something like that sooner or later. Where the top 1% of skiing achieves that.
I hear you. I guess my thoughts were the rope is your kind of last level of safety. It could fail. Your anchors could fail. Things could go wrong even with a rope. And it seems like a PFD is your kind of last layer of safety if things go wrong out on the river. So that was where my thought came from.
I don't know. Under a lot of circumstances, I think when people drown, a life jacket wouldn't have helped them one bit. Having one or not having one.
I feel like John Trujillo and Jason Beeks, those guys used to be real good no life jacket wearers. There was always a handful of people who would go run class 5 with no life jackets. I definitely remember seeing like Beeks out on Great Falls from time to time with no life jacket on when it was really hot out. Or
you guys weren't allowed to wear life jackets.
Scotty Parsons one day going to go run the Maryland side of Great Falls at about 3:06 in slalom boats. We got there and Scotty had forgotten his life jacket, and I was like, we're good, we can go home. And he's like, no, man, it's fine. Just out there.
Sure, but it was also probably a rapid style life jacket that was not Coast Guard approved. It had a half a pound of flotation in it, right? Even some of that was removed, to pass the very minimal flow requirements for an IFC race.
Like Maryland side at 3:06 in an 18-pound small boat and no life jacket.
Valley Mill!
or Great Falls at 3:06 and an 18-pound slalom boat and a Charlie Walbridge high float.
Okay. All right, let me snap you out of there. Bring you back from the glory days here, guys. All right, so speaking of big undertakings, just recently the 24-hour speed record was broken by a group of whitewater paddlers. And one of those paddlers, Todd Wells, we're getting ready to have
What is it? Wait, what is this? Back up. What are you talking about?
Well, there
is a 24-hour distance record for like kayaking. And
it's flat water?
Sheer to
or any kind
of water. As fast as you can go, human power, it's 24 hours.
It's been like set and broken by guys paddling surf skis on the Yukon, where it's just like ripping fast flat.
Right.
I think Andy Cora had it for a minute. There's a guy, Carter, whose last name I can't remember, who was down in the Bay, who I think maybe had it at one point. But anyway.
Todd.
Hey there.
What's up, bud?
How we doing?
Yep.
All right, Todd. Welcome to the Hammer Factor.
Man, it is a pleasure to be here, guys.
So, where are you at?
I am sitting in Crouch, Idaho right now at the lovely public library here.
Nice.
Very good.
It's a good spot.
So, where do you break the speed record? Like, where's that broken? Like, what's the...
Did we wait? Before we get into Todd's trip, did we explain what the speed record to our viewers is? What
I understand.
It represents?
Has it always been like? Have people been? I don't know. For some reason, I know nothing about this. I don't know why, but I haven't even heard of such a thing.
Todd, can you fill us in here on what the speed record is?
Totally. So the speed record, is the longest distance paddled in 24 hours on flowing water. And previously, the previous few records have all been set on the Yukon River up in Canada. So to set it down here on the Salmon River on a more, whitewater heavy river was kind of a unique experience because previously it's just been done in these long surf skis or like those, you see the epic kayaks around quite often. So boats like that is typically what this record has been set in up there on the Yukon.
And so you and a group of guys took this challenge on in Idaho. Who all were you with? Let's kind of set the scene. Who all was on the team?
Yeah, so we kind of put this trip together last minute. A lot of us had dreamed about this 24-hour distance record for a while, and we all kind of knew that it could be possible out there on the stems of the Salmon River. But it wasn't until the Big Fork white a couple weeks ago where Tyler kind of was mentioning that maybe the peak and that this is the time to do it. It's going to be the biggest peak in flows in about 10 years, and it's going to be like the opportunity to break this record if we want to do it. So I was very interested. I was with Isaac Levinson, and he was interested, and of course we needed some kayaks, though we only had creek boats on our trip over there to Montana. So we called my brother, and him and Aniol came out to join us, and we kind of put together this plan pretty last minute, just within a couple of days, to meet in Stanley and start on this wild trip.
And so, where did you start, and where did you end, and what all rivers did you paddle?
And what boats were you in?
So we were just in kind of typical longboats. My brother and I were in Dagger Green boats, and Aniol and Tyler were in Karma Unlimiteds. So it's kind of cool to be breaking this record in boats that are like half the length of what it was set in.
Could you paddle a faster boat? Like, what kind of whitewater was there?
There's some substantial whitewater out there for sure. Lewis, I think you've paddled the Middle Fork at pretty high flows, and it's or maybe not but high. Anyways, the Middle Fork and the main salmon has some good whitewater. So does Marsh Creek at the very top. And the whole time down, I was thinking, like, man, maybe if you had like a sweet carbon sea kayak, you could move a little faster. But there's definitely some serious whitewater, and having
like what's the hardest rapid out there? Class what?
So Dagger Falls is a solid Class 5 rapid, and it's a substantial drop for sure.
I feel pretty good about running that in a carbon sea kayak, I think.
Dagger
I probably want a rudder on there or something. It helps steer. Or skag maybe.
Yeah, totally. Maybe that's the ticket for the 300-mile push. But
could you carry? I mean, are you allowed to get out and carry around a rapid? Is that, or you can't do that?
I think in the previous record attempts, like no one had ever done that before. I think that people had, hopped out of their kayaks to rest for a little bit, and take a break. But Tyler did portage Dagger Falls actually. So, three of us stayed in our boats the whole time, but Tyler decided to portage around it. Kind of last minute made that decision. So, we'll see. We're still working on the application process right now with Guinness, but I don't know.
So you went from Marsh Creek into the Middle Fork into the main?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
And we almost, we got, I think, within 10 or 15 miles of completing the whole lower main salmon and getting into the Snake River before we hit that 24-hour period. And it was nice that we kind of hit that point before we got to the Snake, because there's one last big rapid called Slide on the lower salmon, and we portaged that after the distance record that we did, and it's a stout rapid. It's huge. We all maybe would have ran if we were in creek boats, but in big long boats, it was like, I don't want anything to do with this thing, especially after having just paddled for 24 hours.
So what time did you start? How did you time it? Did you start in the evening, or did you start in the morning, or?
So we started at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we kind of decided upon that because we wanted light for the top on Marsh Creek. But we also wanted it to start getting light for the lower bit of the main, because there's some big boily rapids in there that we wanted to have a little bit of light for. So that was kind of why we decided to start at 8, and it worked out really well for us, actually. We had light where we needed it, and the dark bits were a little scary and a little bit wild for sure, but luckily it was in pretty flat water.
Did you guys put any lights on your boats, or could you see each other at night, or how did you know that you guys were all good?
Totally. So the one break that we took was at about 10:30 p.m. So this is, 14 and a half hour, or no, how long would that be? 14 and a half hours into the trip. And we were right after the confluence with the South Fork of the Salmon. And we pulled over, and as quick as we could, we pulled our boat up on the shore. There's no beaches like there usually is in the Salmon. It's just like up onto the grassy hillsides. And we duct taped some glow sticks to our headlamps and to our kayak. And that was actually a really, really helpful way to be able to see one another when we're going through these rapids. We also duct taped on lamps so we could turn those on if we needed. And in the end, we really didn't use the headlamps much at all. They kind of just threw us off more than anything. So, the main thing was just following these green and red glow sticks down the river, following one another. And we had moonlight for a little bit. So after the sun went down, we had, a half moon about peeking through and shining the way for us. But around 2 o'clock, the moon set, and it was dark for about 3 hours. And that was a really just testing, difficult, kind of psychedelic aspect of the trip. Weird during those 3 hours.
Dude, I got a friend who's a big endurance athlete, and he's been like crossing Arizona crossings and whatever. And he came up to me one day and he was like, I was doing some endurance things and whatever. He's like, dude, if you really want to get into it, you got to get into sleep deprivation, man. That's how you really start tripping. So I guess you got a little bit of it.
Yeah, I believe it now after that experience. Like, I was having some hallucinations that were pretty intense out there. And in particular, Tyler Bradt, he had, this like green glow stick taped on top of his helmet. And then he had this red glow stick on the back of his boat. And he was kind of like, looked like a serpent moving down the river. I was thinking, I just kept telling myself, you got to keep following that dragon. It looked like a dragon.
I always see monkeys when I get to that point. I don't know why, but it's always monkeys.
Yeah. Man,
so what kind of
awesome,
gear? What kind of gear do you have in the boat? Like, how much do you hang it out? Do you bring no sleeping gear because you're committed, or do you bring something like a space blanket, or what kind of food and water? How do you make that work?
Totally. So yeah, we did bring sleeping bags. Each of us brought either a sleeping bag or a heavy down jacket, so that if there was an emergency in the middle of the night, or also if one person just was really not feeling it, we wouldn't want to hold one another back. So the idea was that, if someone's really not feeling it and needs to pull over, they can pull over and camp out for the evening and let the other 3 folks continue on. So we had sleeping bags in the back of our boats. And then we had these lap bags, just a watershed bag that was just packed full of, probably 12,000 calories of food. We had meat and cheese sandwiches, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, different trail mixes that we could dive into, granola bars, all that kind of good stuff. And we also all rigged ourselves up with these camelbacks that we could just dip into the river as we're moving and fill them up, put a couple tabs of chlorine there to purify them. And so it was just key to have everything really accessible there, from the hydration, the electrolyte packets, to the food, whatever you could have easily accessible, ideally just in your life jacket, but if need be inside a lap bag. That was kind of the name of the game and what worked out for us out there.
So you got out at 10 o'clock and that was it, just once, or did you get out again?
We just got out that one time. Tyler was out for another 5 minutes within the first hour and a half of the trip when he ported Stagger Falls. But the rest of us were just in our boats the whole time, just peeing out of our kayaks and, filling up the hydration packs from inside of our kayaks, just getting really comfortable inside those green boats and Karmas that we were in.
So what were the stats? Did you how many feet did you drop? What was your average miles per hour? Have you calculated any of that?
Yeah, so we had a GPS device that was tracking our progress the whole duration of the trip. And from the put in at Marsh Creek where we started down to the lower Salmon where we finished. It was just kind of a random spot on the lower Salmon. But we covered 287.5 miles during that 24 hours.
And what was the previous record?
The previous record was 279.
Oh, wow. It was tight.
Yeah, it was tight for sure. Like we were not far beyond what Carter Johnson set up on the Yukon.
Were you at some point thinking you're not going to make it? Was that thought crossing your mind, or were you pretty sure you were on track the whole time?
The whole time we knew it was going to be tight. We didn't know if we'd make it or not. It was just like, it got to a point where it's just like, man, boys, we just got to get out there and see how far we can paddle in 24 hours. But one of the features of Tyler's GPS that he had was that it could give you your average miles per hour. And we knew that we had to be at 11.5 miles per hour on average to beat the previous record. So we were constantly kind of monitoring that every hour, a couple hours. We'd check in and see where we were at. So that was a useful device. And at the beginning, I was worried that we were not going to make it. The first hour and a half on Marsh Creek is kind of slow. I mean, it feels fast because it's this steep, pretty steep gradient and continuously moving stuff, but you're making these big bends in the river, and there's not nearly as much water up there on Marsh Creek. You're putting in at about 500, 600 CFS probably, and then it grows very quickly. But, that first bit where you don't have a lot of flow pushing you downstream kept us from moving very fast, and I think we were averaging like 10 miles per hour up top there. So, when those were the first stats that we saw, we were like, okay, I think we need to pick it up, or we need to keep moving. And, I don't think we really picked up the pace. We just kind of maintained it, but the river definitely picked up speed and helped us out there. So, yeah.
Very cool.
Sick, man. How are your forearms doing?
Man, my forearms are not doing good, honestly.
Todd showed me his forearms a couple of days ago, and it looks not healthy.
Did you get like the twitching forearm at some point where your forearms start twitching uncontrollably?
Oh man, no twitching forearms, but it makes me cringe just thinking back about it though. But our hands were just like, just saturated, like so wet and gnarly, and these big blisters are popping up all over our hands. Just to have your body wet for 24 hours, has a pretty big toll. And then add, holding your paddle and pulling strokes for the whole day, it definitely kind of burns you out. So just the hands were a big thing by the end of the trip. And then I've never had like tendonitis before in my arms, and I'm having it right now ever since like the end of that trip. And for the last week, it's been bugging me more than I've ever imagined could happen, and it really sucks. I mean, this is like definitely taking a toll on all of our bodies, mine especially. I think that I'm having more trouble with my forearms, with the tendonitis in my forearms than anyone, but I guess that's kind of just part of the thing. So
well, way to bring it back to America, man. Take that, Canada.
Yeah, you sons of bitches.
Communist.
Mark Johnson, the guy set that record, and he's a badass, man. He set this record on the Yukon, and he also, I think, holds the flatwater record. So this guy is like a trained ultra kayaker dude. Like that's what he does. He gets in these long surf skis and does these 24-hour ultras all over the world. There's these events, and sometimes even longer. There's an event on the Yukon where you have to paddle 460 miles. So, I mean, this guy's to push through stuff like that. Whereas the rest of us are just like, a bunch of whitewater kayaks kind of came up with this idea of like, well, let's give it a shot.
We're going to fall off a mountain and break this record.
Exactly.
That's the whitewater spirit, man. You guys dropped more than a mile,
Right.
didn't you?
Yeah, I actually haven't looked at that exactly, man, but I think it's like right, very, very close to a mile, if not a full mile. So that's pretty unique too, to be able to do a vertical mile on one, without like getting out of your kayak is pretty sweet.
I mean, how many places in the country can you do that, really, honestly?
Without getting out of your boat?
That river is
on one river.
I don't know.
I mean,
Middle Kings, maybe?
Yeah, but
Middle Kings. How far do you go? Middle
A
Kings.
little bit, right?
But you have to portage a little bit on the Middle Kings, like there's definitely some places where the water goes under rocks,
Yeah.
So, dude, you're over in Crouch now. Give us the North Fork preview.
Yeah, what's going on over there? What are we looking at next weekend?
Hitters right now, we got Galen, Volkow, Kyle, and William Griffith. So some heavy hitters for sure.
So
you guys not out watching Jake slaps right now.
Yeah, well, that's going to happen soon here. Hopefully, it's looking rowdy though. It's like high 5,000s, and the river is big and gnarly when it's flowing that much. So.
It's so big.
It's gnarly.
I can't wait to see what happens this weekend. Like what sections get raced and how it all goes down.
Totally. Everyone's wondering, if it's going to go real big, if it's going to just stay, at this flow, even though this is like real big still. But I don't know. Crazy. No one really knows if it's going to be, 8,000 CFS or 3,000 CFS. So kind of wait and see, I guess.
Killer, man. Well, thanks for coming on the Hammer Factor, Todd.
Yeah,
Dude,
thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, dude.
I can't believe I never heard of this 24-hour thing. Like, I was supposed to get a memo or something about this, right?
Where you at,
Sounds like it'd be right up your alley, Wells.
I know. I'm loving this.
Yeah,
This is like the best thing I've ever heard.
If you get carbon sea kayak, man, some extra caffeine pills, I think you could break that 300 mile mark.
I guess that's the next barrier.
Yeah, totally.
Grand Canyon in a downriver boat when they do one of those releases.
That could be it.
Downriver boat.
It'd have to be really high.
Nowhere near as fast as the
It'd have to be so high.
I think that's the right.
Yeah, but there's
Maybe
whitewater's
the boot would
slow.
just be-
Like hard whitewater's slow. If you have a fast moving current in a DR boat, you're going to be a lot faster than a green boat in whitewater. That's all there is to it.
Now we know, man. People have tried the fast flat
Exactly,
water.
dude. Just freaking fire it up, man. It's done. Dude, congrats to you guys. That's awesome.
Yeah, congratulations.
seriously.
That was really cool.
Good work, man.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, give our best to
later,
everybody out there. Good luck this weekend.
Sounds good. You guys have a great day.
See ya. See ya.
Later.
He's making friends in the library there.
Yeah. I love that. I love that scene. I love turning around. I'm like, I know that scene.
Grace, by the way, I'm serious about our little project we discussed the other day.
Okay. Well,
I looked at it on the map.
I
don't want to release it yet. I don't want to talk. I don't want to say what we're talking about. I just want to do it, and then when we get back, we can talk about it.
I think that's the best way to get it done. I'd be all about it. I think it's.
I looked at the map. I think it's definitely doable. I didn't look to see if anyone's done it. I'm sure they have, but.
Man, I went kayaking this weekend. I think I'm ready.
Yeah, I did too. Speaking of which, I paddled the Granada. Can I talk about the Granada?
Yeah. Before we move on, let's hear about the Granada.
All right, so Letman Granada. Letman is like what, Lewis? One of the icons. You're talking old school patriarchs of the sport. Letman, Creon. Yeah. Is there anyone else who has a legacy like that in the industry? Multiple generations of boat builders?
No.
Anyway, the company's currently being run by Jochen Letman, who I think is the son of the original Letman. My first boat was a Letman Mark V, by the way, which would have been late 70s.
That was my father's first boat, too.
Letman Mark V. Yeah, there was a mold floating around the United States, and people were pulling boats off it like crazy. But anyway, Jochen Letman's running the company. He makes this creek boat called the Granada. Right, so you can get them in the U.S. I'm not quite sure how though, because we had one here locally at our store.
Darren
who's bringing them in?
Importing them now.
Okay, but Jochen is a slalom boater, right? And he designed this creek boat.
I think it was even more like
I would say
slalom racers than him. Like I think it was like Fabian Dorfler and Thilo Schmidt, maybe.
No, but yeah. No, I know he had collaborators on this, but as a guy who runs a boat building company, he has a distinctive slalom background, you know. And that's where his influences are clearly coming from. But anyway, if you want to paddle a boat that gets a lot of people talking to you about your boat you're paddling, paddle one of those, because I got stopped about 10 times by people asking me what I thought of it.
And what do you mean? What are they saying?
They say, "Oh, is that the Letman?" I'm like, "Yeah." So word's out on this thing, and people are interested in it. That's for sure.
Well, what'd you think?
So I was paddling the large one, which was 8.6, seemed like 8.5 feet. And it was it. Well, Lewis, you paddled this before as well, right?
Yeah. So I paddled. So when this boat came out, I mean, this thing's been out for probably like 5 years, and a bunch of guys had it at Sick Line, and I saw pictures of this boat, and I was like, I got to have this thing. Like, this is the boat I've always wanted. It's like designed by slalom racers. It has like a slalom hull shape. Like, this is going to be the greatest boat ever. Right. Like, how do I get it? And you
get in the boat. I mean, the minute you sit in the boat and start paddling it, you're struck by how slalomy it feels, and maybe not necessarily in a good way, but it's stuck on rails. You know what I mean? It has a very fast hull to it, like way faster feeling than a typical creek boat.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, I can't wait to paddle this thing, and I think maybe my expectations were like a little bit too high. And I paddled the XL first, and I paddled it, and I was like, this is cool, but it just wasn't like magic. Like, it was pretty easy, but also a little bit like mushy. I felt like the deck was a little bit like the cockpit rim hit me like right at rib level in the XL. And I was sort of like, like I could paddle this thing for sure, but I wasn't like, I got to have it right now. And then I've paddled the large also, which is just like a little bit too small for me. It's not a very big boat, right? But I think it's a little like sportier. But my reaction to this thing was, it really like made me reconsider what I wanted in a kayak, because for the longest time I thought what I really wanted was just like a slalom boat, like a slalom hull shape. And after I paddled this thing, it really helped me understand that, so much of what makes a slalom boat is having a low volume stern, and not just to be able to do pivot turns, but to be able to do like really low pivot turns where you're really like driving the boat off the outside hip. And that it just doesn't work in a high volume creek boat. And so like after I paddled this thing, it really made me think that maybe you do need really hard edges on a creek boat or on a high volume boat in a way that you don't need in, a small boat.
So you need what now?
Keep the boat feeling really dynamic. Like, you need like a hard edge under the seat or something. Otherwise the boat's just going to feel mushy because you can't drive it off the hip or like off the stern edge when there is no stern edge, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but what creek boat has an edge to it?
Like the Tuna or the Mamba, or any of those modern boats that have that hard chine. I mean, I think that you can.
I thought the Granada had a reasonably hard, a lot harder chine than like I don't know, the majority of the creek boats out there for sure. I felt like.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. It's not that I don't think it's a good boat. It's definitely like one of my top.
Well, here's what I did. So I put on. I was swapping boats with Ian von Stoutmeister, who works for us, and I hopped in at National Falls on the Upper Yacht.
Did he run Cucumber Falls?
Yeah, he was one of the guys running Cucumber. Yeah. And so I peeled out and ran National quick, and there's just sort of an easy booth on the river right side there, and you kind of locked in on the booth, like 20 yards above the booth in that boat. You locked in on it. And usually when you approach that booth, there's a couple of cross waves and stuff like that you kind of have to fiddle with. There was none of that with this boat. I mean, you just started driving. And once you got within a couple inches of it, if you were a little off, you realized you were a little off like 20 feet ago. You know what I mean? You were like locked into that thing. And then
I don't think
you
it's
go
that
to
hard
do.
To paddle. I don't think
it's not. It's not. I'll get to that in a minute. But when you get to do the booth, usually with like a kicktail, you can do that lean back and sort of like that stern draw to get the nose lifting up. The Granada's not having any of that. I mean, you're going to do that booth not by lifting the stern up, by sheer German determination. You're going to drive that boat into the eddy. That's the only way that's going to get in there, And so that was, I'm so used to being able to do like a last minute stern draw to pull the nose up even off a clean lip. That's just boat's not going to do it. But when you land, extremely stable. That's one thing I noticed about it. I mean, it wasn't hard, but
I'm surprised you found it to be that different. Like, I didn't think it was that.
I thought it was really different. and I felt like it wasn't hard to turn because after I was only an 8.5-foot boat, and especially if you could turn like off the top of a wave instead of like, trying to turn where the nose is buried or using the currents to help you turn, a paddle like that, and which is fine. But I suddenly found myself missing sort of the cheater moves like you could get away with in a more traditional creek boat,
Meh. I didn't think it was that hard. I don't know. It's a good boat.
I feel comfortable paddling hard water in it, but
John,
it's different. I thought it was very different.
Could it be because you were jumping right out of the party wrap into this thing that it felt
most certainly
yeah, instead of going from one creek boat to another creek boat kind of thing?
Yeah, for sure. That probably had a lot to do with it.
I think that XL would be a 6 to Keen boat.
I'm looking at it.
Pretty fast.
It looks pretty cool. I mean, my thing just by looking at the picture is it looks like it's going to be a weird surfacer, like when the whole boat's underwater. But maybe not.
There was no, like I was trying to drop into holes like off balance or leaning upstream a little bit. There was rock stable in that situation. There was no weirdness. So
Latman,
it seems really narrow too, doesn't it? I mean, especially the tail of the boat seems super narrow. I felt
from
like it
the
was.
pictures,
and then the knee braces. And the knee braces were like so high and close together, like you take your knees out of the braces and they were touching. I mean, they're right there, And the outfitting,
Lewis, you're like,
I think the boat was fine.
Is this the same boat I
paddle a bit? I will say the outfitting was terrible, and they need to work on the outfitting for sure. They did have IR ratchet straps on it, which was nice. The back band was terrible, and the thigh braces were.
We just
like
had
two big
totally
bruises waiting to happen.
Yeah, if I could just
experiences in this boat, it was like.
If people could see the expressions with Lewis when John's talking.
It's complete disgust. Lewis has a look of complete disgust on his face as I'm describing this.
It's basically like you have no idea what you're talking about. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, disgust, my ignorance, I think is what I'm seeing. And just general disappointment.
Okay, try it for yourself. Send us a message.
It's a boat worth trying.
If you've paddled it, send us a message. Compare it to something because I don't know what to make of this.
I would put that boat in the tuna 9R conversation of boats worth considering.
Yeah, for sure.
Moving on.
For sure. I'm not saying it's a bad boat at all. Don't get me wrong.
Moving on. I haven't had a chance to paddle the Narvana yet, but as soon as I do, I will let you guys know. I'll get an opinion on that. I don't know. For some reason, that one's looking pretty good to me. Lewis, you poo-poo on that one, but that one's looking good to me.
It just looks like so ugly to me. But the boys are stoked, and apparently the production one's better than the Proto, and
we'll see.
I believe it's genuine opinion. I feel like I can discern between like the I have to tell you this boat is good conversation and I'm actually stoked on this boat conversation. I believe I can tell.
Have you paddled?
He hates every boat. You thought, just to clear something up, you thought the outfitting in the Granada was good.
I don't really remember. I guess I liked that it was simple.
I found it to be really uncomfortable. And you see the back band twist all around. Ian paddled with the back band facing the wrong way for half the trip before he realized what was going on. Like it twisted as he sat in the boat in the back.
My feeling about boat outfitting is that it takes some really bad outfitting to be like not salvageable, right? It's like you just take some foam and some contact cement and spend 45 minutes and the boat's good, unless they've really, really like messed something up.
All right.
Have you guys been monitoring the North Fork of the American inflow into Lake Clementine Gauge?
The what?
I've not.
The North Fork of the American River inflow into Lake Clementine Gauge.
Is that a favorite of yours?
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. Because it basically kicks off the overnighter season of California. When it hits about 1,200 CFS, that's where you need to be, and it's right around 14, 15 right now.
So it just got cold down there.
It did, but it didn't drop that much. I think it's on. I think starting Saturday, if I could go on vacation for the next 8 weeks, I would go to California and put on the Royal Gorge on Saturday, and I'd stay there until 7 weeks later when the Middle Kings runs.
You are on vacation for the next 8 weeks. What are you talking about?
I got a nanny to pay
Just tell your nanny you're heading out.
Reason I bring
Give your
that
wife
up.
a couple $100 for food, and you're out of there.
Reason I.
No?
Feed the dog, honey. I'll be back. Reason I bring that up is overnighter season is upon us. A lot of our listeners have thought about doing an overnighter. I'm going to throw this to you, Lewis. What's great about an overnighter? What are the things that you like about it?
Oh man, everything. Not looking at your phone, not getting in the car, just waking up on the river, going to sleep on the river, just doing nothing but kayaking and being outside and just stripping away everything that's extraneous in life for a few days and just focusing on what you're doing and being outdoors. And it's the best thing going.
It's so simple. I mean, it's very complex, but it's just so simple, the mentality you get into.
And like, man, when you go to California, everything in California is so far apart and like the logistics are so complicated. And it's like doing overnighters is awesome because that's like 3 days that you're not thinking about like running shuttle, where you're going to next, what the water level is, whose car is going where, like, do I need to go buy food? Like any time that you're not on the river in California, to me is just like a massive pain in the ass. It's like the goal is just to like find an overnighter and like put on and not have to do any more of that stuff for like the maximum number of possible days.
It's true. What about you, John?
It's the reason, even if you don't know, even if you're a whitewater paddler and don't know this is the reason why you're whitewater paddling, is the overnighter. And as soon as you do it, you'll realize that this is the whole reason why you put up with all the nonsense for all those years, because this is. And then it's like your whitewater bar mitzvah. Then you become a man or a woman.
Yeah, I remember the first time I went to the Stikine, halfway down, and just thinking to myself, if every single moment of kayaking in my life up until this point had been like pure tedium and just like suffering to get good enough to do this, it would have been worth it.
Right.
Like,
man, I'm going to pull that soundbite and put it into the intro.
Let's talk about our gear picks and how to pack our boats for an overnighter. Let's pick an easy one. 3 days. 3 days of camping, 4 days on the river.
Man.
This depends where you are.
I don't know, somewhat warm, not freezing cold,
All right, so gear. I think
could rain. You could get rain. Let's just throw in rain because that makes it a little more interesting.
Let's just start with shelter. Are you a tent or a tarp guy? You got to have one of the two. You can't go out there with, even if you're in California, with nothing.
I like to bring a 2-person tent split between 2 people. Something light, like an MSR Hubba Hubba or one of those light camping tents. The Hubba Hubba is good because you can actually use it up as you can set up as like one of those mega mids if you want, without the fly or without the the main tent part. But the one person takes like the ground cloth and the fly, the other person takes the tent and the poles, right? £1 and a quarter each. And then you're ready. If it's really shitty out, you're set. Because if it pours rain and you're in a mega mid or one of those tarp things, all your stuff's getting wet.
You're talking about like the little bivy sacks or whatever?
Bivy sacks are worthless.
I'll agree with that.
Bivy sacks are just a complete, absolute waste of money on a kayaking trip. There's an illusion out there. You can bring a bivy sack and you're going to remain dry if it starts raining, and that's a falsehood. Yeah,
when I see people with bivy sacks, a lot of times I start questioning whether they need to be on the river with me that day.
Well, clearly they've never slept in bivy sack in the rain because they would be making that mistake.
Exactly. They would definitely know better.
Oh man.
You disagree, Lewis.
Here we go, Lewis.
I mean, I definitely have nowhere near the illustrious expedition paddling career that the two of you have had. That I I don't know. I guess my feeling is that there's no perfect answer. For a long time, I thought that you were going to like find the ultimate sleeping system for overnighters, and it just totally depends where you're going and what you're doing.
I just described it. I don't know what you're
I actually
what you're looking for.
I don't think I've ever owned a tent.
You've never brought a tent?
I've never owned a tent.
Oh man, dude, a tent. So I'm gonna differ from
The only
John
time I
here.
had a tent. The only time
Grace, you're with me on this one, right?
I'm with you on this one, but
Unless you know it's going to be dry. Unless you're going to like
no, hang on.
someplace
hang
you
on.
know you're not going to see rain for 7 days.
I tell you, my Cali system is I have like a very, very small tarp that I bring, but most of the time you're pretty much counting on it not raining, and the tarp is just like, worst case scenario. I bring that a lot. I've slept under that little tarp, like it's like a 6x8 with a bivy sack before, like just in combination in absolutely pouring rain, and been like really happy.
Why not bring a tent? If
Yeah,
gonna bring a
that point,
tarp,
weight-wise, you're right at the tent weight.
Well, to me, then I think the next step up from that is the Mega Mid. And the Mega Mid for two people is like really light and really weatherproof.
All right, let me break this one down for you.
And I wouldn't go beyond that unless there were bugs.
So I have done the share a tent before. I've done the share a tent. Daniel and I shared a tent a lot on a lot of trips. But this is why you want the tent. And I prefer just a single person tent because I like to read at night or whatever, and you don't want to keep somebody up next to you or whatnot. But the tent, it doesn't matter what you have to deal with during the day. If you can not have bugs biting your forehead, if you don't have water dripping on you at night, if your sleeping bag is dry and whatever, it doesn't matter what you got to deal with for that 10 hours, struggling, dealing with the bush, water's coming up on you, shit hits the fan, somebody swims, you got to hike, you get in a weird portage, whatever happens. As long as you can get like a comfortable night's sleep, bring it on. You can deal with whatever the next day.
Psychologically, it's like a huge thing.
I totally agree with that philosophy.
When your stuff starts getting wet, and then you had to deal all day long, and you got 4 more days on the river, and it's raining, and you know it's going to rain every single day, and your shit is soaking ass wet, it sucks. You can't ever chill out and recharge, and then it's unsafe, and then just the shit goes down. And on a similar note, I used to always use just like the shittiest, lightest 3/4 length sleeping pad. And in my old age, have moved up to one of those like really nice new Thermarest New Air,
like Jack's plastic welding.
Not quite like that. Like those like new nice like big Thermarests, like the Neo Airs. Man, like that is weight worth bringing. Like in terms of just,
I can still bust out the 3/4 length Thermarest.
I mean, you can, but like you'll be happier if you do.
I'm with Lewis on this one. My golden nugget to anybody who wants to go on an expedition is make sure you can get a solid 8 hours sleep comfortably.
And your sleeping bag is dry.
And your stuff
requires
is
a separate dry bag for your sleeping bag and your shitty stove floats. Make sure that's dry.
Yeah. Make sure that you can just like hell is breaking loose all around you and you're stuck above the unportageable, unnavigable, whatever, and your friend, everything's breaking down. As long as you can just go to sleep and wake up, it's good. But if you can't do that, and I've been in that situation, you don't do it twice.
Yeah. So
that's my golden tip. What else? What other gear we got?
I bring a cook stove. I bring my MSR. Faithful MSR cook stove. Even you can always make a fire. It can't hurt.
Yeah, that depends too. To me, it's like if you're going to California, I feel like you can go without a stove.
Yeah, California is like glamping though. I'm starting to think it's not really like because I'm used to thinking
DC would be a lot more your speed. Well, California is like in California, you feel like God made the world for you to be happy in as a kayaker. When you go to BC, you feel like your life may serve no higher purpose than to feed a hungry bear.
My mind keeps going back to Borneo. I spent almost a month crossing Borneo where it rained like someone was dumping a bucket of water on your head all the time. We were covered with leeches. It was 100 degrees. There was no sleep. We were soaking wet, covered with sores. waiting to get like schistosomiasis or some horrible disease. This went on for weeks and weeks and weeks. There was no staying dry. Everything was rotten.
It's a little different.
We had to do like a
in
leech
California.
check. Every day was like a leech check. We had to bend over and look at your buddy's private parts because they were everywhere.
This is great because
And then
all
it's
my
like-
sound bites for the intro are going to come out of this show. I don't have to look at it. Oh, I like to bring a stove. Sometimes I don't in California, but I like to bring a stove.
I bring a stove because it's easy. It's a no-brainer. You can start, it's a guaranteed thing. It cuts down cooking time, by quite a bit. I bring one stainless steel coffee pot that I empty out to boil water in and put the innards back in again. One of those percolator things. How about dinners? Freeze-dried dinners, or do you guys pack make up a whole thing?
No, I don't ever take freeze-dried stuff. I
Me
bring
neither.
food. And I always bring a big thing, some salami or whatever, but I'll bring some hard containers with tomatoes and all sorts of fresh food, eggs. Yeah.
What's the
You don't really
longest
like
you've ever lived out of a
days?
kayak for?
14 days.
14 days without resupply.
Mm-hmm.
Where was that?
In the Grand Canyon,
But you had raft support or just in kayaks?
just kayaks.
What kayaks were you in?
Stinger XPs.
That's pretty good. What was the temperature like?
It was the winter. It was cold, but it was warm. It was fine. The beauty of that trip is that you don't ever have to portage your kayak, and so that really changes the dynamic of what you're packing. If you're getting into some place that you got to do a bunch of portages, you're not going to take the things that I took on that trip down the Grand Canyon, because the worst I have to do is pull my boat on the beach. I can do a Z-drag if I need to.
Right. Right.
It was
How about
about
you,
that.
Geltman?
I think 7.
Where was that?
Also the Grand.
That's a quick trip.
Yeah.
And then how about-
It's a little bit too fast.
What else do we bring, and how do we pack our boats?
Well, hang on. One more thing that I think that is really good to bring is if you like coffee and that kind of thing in the morning. I have got one of these. It's like a little coffee mug with a plunger in the top.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what brand it is. I think I may have bought it from Starbucks or something. But that's super sweet. You just pour a little coffee in there, plunge it down. You're ready to rock.
I got this little MSR filter cone thing. You kind of do a little pour over with. It's pretty good.
With the little, do you have to put a little filter in it, or?
No, it's just super fine mesh, and it kind of sits in the water. I feel like the coffee ends up kind of a halfway between a pour over and a French press, but it's pretty passable.
What about I'm a staunch supporter of watershed dry bags. Going back to my statement of there's some things you just don't want to get wet no matter what.
Yeah,
They're a pain in the ass, so they're hard to close, and they don't pack down that well.
They don't pack very well, but that's the other negative.
That anchor point that ties the ears down needs to be down at the end of the bag. It's it's in the wrong place. They're sticky, so they don't slide in and out of your boat very well. They're heavy, but they're bomber and they're dry, and that is, you cannot say that about any other options.
Yeah.
I bring a stove float, but I put my sleeping bag in a separate waterproof bag, and everything else and my clothes usually go in a separate waterproof bag too, like my off-river clothes. But I'll bring
still
one,
have
maybe. What's that?
You still have the old stove floats with the wands?
Yeah. Hell yeah. They still sell those. I bought a pair of those not too long ago.
Nice. Do you know what we're talking about, Grace?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. But they fit. I mean, you can get a lot of stuff in there, those things, and they fit down at the end of your boat,
How about here's a tip on how about breakdown paddles? How many? Let's say you got a group of 4. How many breakdown paddles do you bring?
Depends on the river.
Yeah.
I usually say one breakdown per 2 people. But this is something that I've ran into before, is don't separate. If you're a breakdown guy, offer some other piece of gear for somebody else to take other than half of the breakdown. Because if you lose half of a breakdown, it's like not having a breakdown at all. So don't separate. I've been with groups before. People are like, oh, let's separate the breakdown. And then somebody swims, loses their boat, or something epic happens. And then they break their paddle and you're stuck with a half of a paddle. Or you break your paddle, you're way upstream in a canyon, and you're like, oh, I got half of the paddle, and homeboy with the other half is like down at the bottom of the canyon. So don't split your paddle.
Right.
That's it. That's a little tidbit I've ran into.
Now, do you guys try and put gear in front of the boat, in front of the bulkhead?
Always.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that.
I like it, but it's just such a pain in modern boats to get the bulkhead out that I rarely do it anymore.
You have to
Usually
sort of
if
make
it's
some design modifications to make that possible.
If it's like middle kings or upper cherry and I have a backpack, when I get to the put in, I'll pull it out and put my backpack in front of the bulkhead, like something where I'm not going to have to take my bulkhead out of my boat every day.
And do you move your seat forward a little bit to tweak for that added weight in the back, Lewis? Or how do you balance out?
Always. Yeah, I move my seat like 3/4 of an inch forward probably.
Yeah, that's kind of my style.
And the bulkhead forward 1 notch too. Otherwise, you're just moving the seat under your ass.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many people I've been on an overnighter with. It's their first overnighter that I watch them on day one, and I'm like, when we get to camp, we're going to adjust that boat just a little bit. That's a big one.
I love. That's something I like about overnighters a lot is just watching everybody else's operation, and you just like pick up little things from everybody over time. It's like.
Do you empty your boat to run a big rapid, or are you a purist? Do you keep the gear in?
No, I don't ever empty my boat.
Never take gear out of the boat to run a rapid.
If there was like maybe a big canyon and I was going to camp at the bottom of it, I may carry my stuff around to camp and then run it or something like that. But
for some reason, I've taken gear out of my boat to run a rapid, but I can't remember exactly where. I don't know.
It probably made more of a difference, like back when you guys were doing those trips with really long boats. Like I feel like short boats having gear in the boat affects it way less than.
I mean, I wasn't. Come on, I'm not 100.
But I mean, you guys are doing like stout expeditions and like tornadoes and white bears and stuff like that.
We did some of those, yeah. I built the boat. I built the boat that we crossed Baffin in. It was a white bear. Remember that boat, the white bear?
Oh yeah.
A vacuum bag, foam core, 28-pound boat.
I did a Clendenning trip a few years ago. My boat was broken, so I brought my Tornado, and like I was just like blown away by how much harder that boat was to paddle with gear in it. Like a regular boat, you put gear in it, and it just like it makes a difference, but it's not like night and day. And like you got in that Tornado loaded for 3 days, and it was like I wanted, like how the hook and ladder truck has like the guy who sits in the back and helps steer. I needed that.
Well, the Tornado's like a canoe. I mean, you could easily put like a month's worth of gear on that and get yourself to like a 180-pound boat in no time. I mean, it just eats gear. You could go below deck and make a cocktail.
That's how my Stinger XP was in the Grand Canyon. It was just ridiculous.
I mean, because the Tornado, you could pull the bulkhead right out and just load it. You can put almost as much gear in front of the bulkhead as behind in those things. It's endless.
Yeah, that's a good piece of advice for people on their first overnighters is don't think that the constraint is space. If you're using the available space, like you've gone way, way, way too far already.
Yeah. I took my kids on their first overnighter a couple weekends ago, and I was like, they're allowed to bring like one change of clothes. They are allowed to have like one fork, one cup. We used to do. I'm going to tell a Valley Mill story again, and then
we have to move on.
We used to do the hardcore overnight trip with Andy Bridge, where we go out to that mosquito-ridden island in the middle of Potomac, and the kids were allowed. We'd give them all the food for the entire weekend on Friday. You know what I mean? And they're allowed to bring like one fork, one cup, a blanket, and a sleeping bag or whatever. And probably 25 to 30% of the kids would eat almost all of their food Friday night and then have nothing to eat for the remaining 2 days.
We did a trip like that. It was the island that the overlook goes out to now at Great Falls, and it was like the overlook had been washed out at the time. So like they're paddling. And I can still go out there and point out the rock that I slept on that night. Like we weren't allowed to have sleeping bags. We weren't allowed to have pads. You just had a wool blanket. We were just out there on the rocks.
That's great.
Well, now you're ready for an overnighters. If you have any questions about overnighters, send us a message. It is overnighter season. It's happening right now. So
One last question. If you're going to do a class 4 or 5 overnighter, 3 or 4 days, what's your perfect boat right now? What's the ideal boat?
Gus.
Really? Why not say Huck? Go for it.
I don't know. Just the biggest 9-foot creek boat you can find.
You can pick any boat you want. What are you going to take?
Party Bradt. Party Bradt with a lap bag. I don't know, Mike.
Geltman?
Whatever. I mean, I feel like I always pick my boat with it in mind that I want to be able to paddle it with gear in it. So, like, I'm happy in the tuna.
Thanks, guys. That's been a great answer.
I mean, my point is you don't need a special boat.
That's
I know, but I'm just saying, for the sake of conversation, what would you take right now? Tuna?
Tuna.
All right, was that hard? Thank you. Grace, what would you take?
Tuna.
All right. You asking me what I'm going to take? Is that what you guys are looking at?
No, we don't care.
White bear.
We got to move on.
White bear.
Yeah, well, let's leave it at that.
Thanks.
So we're over our time. I was going to keep this thing. We're over time. We're out of time. But we got a ladies show coming up. We've got some good questions and comments for our ladies panel that we're going to do in the next coming weeks.
Yeah, keep them coming.
Yeah. These are definitely good. There's all kinds. There's some good ones in there, but one of them stood out was peeing in the funnel.
Right.
You guys got any advice for that, or should we wait?
I've given this exact issue a tremendous amount of thought.
And
because we've made a women's dry suit before.
And so
I'll tell you.
You want to sell the funnel with it, or how does it work?
Well, we won't be able to pick their own funnel because people are actually pretty particular about the funnel, as it turns out.
Okay.
The issue with the drop zip, right, is that these zippers are not curved; they're rectangular, right? And so to sew in a big, long rectangular zipper into the butt of a suit requires some pretty crafty pattern making, and essentially it makes a very big, loose suit, at least bigger than we would want. And big, empty, dry suits are hard to heat, and we figured if you put a relief zip in the front of it, you could really make a much more tailored suit. That was our pattern making view on it. We also solicited a bunch of hardcore women kayakers who felt the same way. And performance aside, they just didn't feel like the Shiwi was that big of a deal. But I think also we're very conscious that it's a deal breaker for at least half the consumers out there.
I can see that. I don't have any input on that one, but we'll let our ladies panel dive into that.
Yes, so. I'm gonna hand it off to them at this point.
All right, guys. Favorite segment of the show: rants and raves. I'll kick us off here with a rave. Pisgah National Forest. Pisgah National Forest it's a huge forest here in western North Carolina. There's all kinds of incredible kayaking, rock climbing, mountain biking, hiking. It is the best place in the... I don't want to say that. It's an incredible place to recreate. Pisgah National Forest, you can always find something to do there.
We're working on forest planning there right now. Kevin Colburn is leading the charge. We're going to make sure it stays that way.
There you go. It's killer. And to you guys? Chirp,
Geltman?
Chirp, chirp, chirp. Crickets.
Man, I got nothing. I don't know. I'm real fired up about the North Fork race this weekend. I'm not racing in deference to my shoulder and old age, but I'm pretty fired up to go over and watch these boys try and race Jakes at 6,000 CFS or whatever it's going to be this weekend. It's going to be
how far of a drive
truly
is it
next
for you?
level. Maybe 7 hours, maybe 6.
That's like in the West Coast. That's like a drive around the corner. Everything's 6 hours away. I think driving units in the West Coast are measured in 3-hour blocks. Like 3 hours, one driving unit, and if you lived in the West Coast,
it's like. Yeah, it's about the same as it is to Seattle, but instead of sitting in traffic on I-5, you just just cruise across Eastern Oregon, and before you know it, you're there.
Mr. Weld, do you have a rant or rave to close us down with?
I have a rant, but I don't know if it really something's been eating at me all week, and I don't know if it's anyone's going to appreciate out there. We've talked about this before, but our industry left the outdoor retailer trade show, and as a result, IR is not going, and a bunch of other manufacturers aren't going. Basically, I think paddle sports didn't, for a couple of odd reasons, didn't want to fit in with the outdoor retailer show schedule anymore, so they left, and now we're just adrift. And we're becoming isolationists, and I call it Prexit, paddle sports retailer exit from the outdoor retailer show. Is exactly what it is. And it's just been bugging me. I feel like it's such a step in the wrong direction. I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you what, and this is something to think about, is, what's the solution?
Go back to OR. Simple. Go back to OR. It was driven by retailers. A lot of retailers didn't like the show moving to an earlier date, which is a lot more in line with the way manufacturers order stuff. Truth is IR ordered 2018 goods last January. That's when we ordered them. And retailers say, well, we can't have a show in June because we don't know what we're going to sell yet. For 2018, we haven't gone to the summer yet. Well, we didn't know what we're going to sell either when we ordered the stuff 3 or 4 months earlier. So retailers push the show to September till after the summer's over, when they have a better idea of what they're going to need. But by then, manufacturers have ordered everything. It's all done. And that's the whole reason why they moved the show at an earlier date to begin with, is for that exact reason, for retailers and manufacturers to be in sync with each other in terms of the supply chain. But paddle sports didn't want to do that, And so it's putting 100% of the burden on buying and 100% of the risk on buying and ordering and speculating all this gear on the manufacturer, which is not what retailers need to be doing right now. That's just, with all the threat they have from internet competition, they need to be more involved with the inventory, not less.
I have some opinions.
Yeah, it seems
on
to me like paddle sports leaving outdoor retailer. It just seems so totally indefensible to me. It's
it's really dumb.
Retail is already shrinking.
Yeah.
It's what remains, it seems like there are so many shops that would probably be on the fence about whether to stock paddling stuff at all. And if you have to get a whole separate trade show in order to facilitate that, it's that's just going to make it an easy decision not to do it.
Not only that, I'm starting to hear from all our suppliers who go to the show, They're asking, well, how can we set an appointment? I'm like, we're not going this year. And so it makes us look like we're headed in the direction of windsurfing. The sport's getting marginalized, And we had a larger voice as part of the larger, the retail environment. We were part of a bigger entity, but I don't know.
Time will tell.
When they put me in charge, I'm going to run things differently.
All right, boys.
Excuse
that's
me.
A wrap. That's that's the end of the soundbite show, because there were some good ones on that one.
Yeah. Right.
Anyway.
All right. Very good.
Thanks for listening.
When's the ladies show? Is that next week or the week after?
We got to talk to Miss Kara Weld about that, because it won't be next week. I think it's going to be the week after.
All right. Okay.
So you'll have to hear us banter. We expect a very good North Fork Championship report, along with photos and an essay, Lewis. So there we go.
All right.
Good luck to all the racers. See you guys.
All right. Bye-bye.
Later.